Hello guys, and welcome to another discussion video. And over the past few months, if not couple years now, a lot of people have been discussing the next Nintendo console, whether that be a direct successor to the Nintendo Switch, which is pretty likely, or something completely different. So, over the past few weeks, I feel like it's been spiraling out of control with discussion of this. Like, even more people have been discussing it now, due to the fact that there's been a lot of rumors and reportings about this. And one topic of discourse that I wanted to talk about today is backwards compatibility, since it was brought up recently in an article from the Video Game Chronicle. And yeah, it was basically based on one of those rumors for the next Nintendo console, Nintendo Switch 2, or whatever it's gonna be. I'm taking all of these rumors with a grain of salt. I don't really believe them, because I feel like they're kind of popping up every couple days now. So, who knows? I mean, like, I think at the earliest it's gonna come out in late 2024, but I'm not really gonna talk about the fact that it's like rumored much. I'm gonna talk more about backwards compatibility and how backwards compatibility can affect the next Nintendo console. But yeah, so basically in this article, when they got to backwards compatibility, they said it like remains unclear whether this console is gonna have backwards compatibility or not. And they mentioned that some third-party publishers expressed concern that legacy support on the next Nintendo console for Nintendo Switch games could negatively affect their sales. And yeah, that's pretty concerning that they feel that way, because backwards compatibility is extremely important, especially if the next Nintendo console is going to be similar to the Nintendo Switch in terms of hardware and everything, if it's going to be like a hybrid console. So yeah, I feel like backwards compatibility could really make or break the next Nintendo console. And I feel like if it doesn't have backwards compatibility, it would be bad for both Nintendo and the user base, for a few different reasons. Like, one, there's like over 100 million Nintendo Switches. Millions of users who've bought Nintendo Switch games and are still buying Nintendo Switch games and probably will until the next Nintendo console is announced. And even after that, too, when they're still on sale and everything. So there's millions, hundreds of millions of Nintendo Switch games out there. And there's also a very large library, thousands of games, hundreds of Nintendo published titles that are out there on the Nintendo Switch, and it would just be throwing that all away if the next console didn't have backwards compatibility. The reason the Switch, the base Switch, didn't have backwards compatibility was because it was kind of a completely new platform. Like, unlike the GameCube to the Wii and the Wii to the Wii U, the Nintendo Switch was kind of something completely different, almost like going from the Nintendo 64 to the GameCube. It used completely different hardware, a completely different format. But that being said, I still feel like it handled that aspect very poorly, and it was pretty concerning that it didn't have backwards compatibility despite the hardware limitations. There could have been a very easy way that Nintendo could have like ported over the Wii U games and just had them available digitally for people who already own those games on Wii U to download, or you could transfer your games between the Wii U and the Switch if the Nintendo Switch had those games available on there. They could have done something like that, since the Nintendo Switch is definitely more than capable of running a lot of Wii U games. Obviously, it wouldn't be like all of the Wii U games, because some of them use the Wii U gamepad like exclusively. So yeah, the Nintendo Switch already had a problem with backwards compatibility, but at least in the case of the Switch, it was kind of Nintendo restarting, and like they kind of did it in a way where the Wii U games were ported over as separate new releases, basically like, unfortunately, most of them were full $60 releases that a lot of people like either had to rebuy to get the new content in these games or just skip in general. So it was pretty unfortunate what happened between the Wii U and Switch, but at least in that case, it was somewhat understandable. But going from the Switch to the next console, if, like, let's say this console is a hybrid console like the Switch, that would be completely unexcusable if the next console didn't have backwards compatibility. Because it wouldn't really, like I said, the Switch has a large catalog of games, and that would be completely throwing that out of the window. Especially due to the fact that we're still getting heavy hitters on the Switch right now. Like The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Pikmin 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Super Mario RPG Remake, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon Remake, which is supposedly coming out the same year that the Nintendo Switch successor is rumored to release, as well as that brand new Peach game. So that would be throwing that completely out the window, and like, basically the only solution they'd have to re-releasing these games or making these games available to play on the next Nintendo console is to port them. Like, make them so where if you have these games on the Switch, you'd have to buy them outright to play it on the next Nintendo console. And that would be horrible. Like, why would that would be a horrible decision. Like, I don't know why Nintendo would do that. Like, yeah, I feel like that would definitely negatively affect this next supposed Nintendo console and everything. And yeah, I feel like, especially with the fact that there's over like 120 million Nintendo Switch owners, like, or at least Nintendo Switch units out there. There's like a similar amount of people who've played the Switch, or a decent amount of people who've played the Switch actively. So yeah, that would really be basically throwing the install base of the Nintendo Switch under the bus. And it would be a very bad decision. And then also looking in the past, after a lot of Nintendo's successful consoles, it wouldn't really make sense to ditch backwards compatibility or not include backwards compatibility on the next console, since the console following some of Nintendo's most successful consoles have had it, like between the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color that had it, the Game Boy Color to the Game Boy Advance. So the Game Boy Advance had it, and then the Game Boy Advance to the DS. The DS had Game Boy Advance backwards compatibility. Then, like I mentioned previously, like the GameCube to the Wii, and then the Wii to the Wii U, and the Wii was one of the most successful Nintendo consoles, so that made a lot of sense to have that on the Wii U. And the Wii U was basically kind of an upgraded version of the Wii, even though it had a lot of differences in terms of UI and power and everything. It made sense to have Wii games on there, as well as the 3DS, which is also kind of a direct successor to the DS and everything. So the next Nintendo console will probably be something similar to either the Game Boy Advance, Wii U, or 3DS in terms of how it will be kind of built and everything, and how it will be a successor to the last console. So it would really not make any sense if they don't have backwards compatibility on the next Nintendo console. And yeah, and with third-party developers and publishers that I was mentioning earlier, it kind of does make sense that they would be concerned with backwards compatibility, as scummy as that sounds. But there are alternatives where they could still, like, profit off of a new console with older games. Like, they could release, like, HD versions of, or, like, basically higher quality versions of other games, deluxe versions of other third-party games. I mean, like, they still can re-release their games, and there will still be many people who will be interested in buying them, and there will still be a large amount of people to basically advertise to. So I don't really think having backwards compatibility will negatively affect the sales for third-party publishers. So yeah, anyways, backwards compatibility is very important, And I really feel like that's something that could make or break the next Nintendo console, so I really hope it will be there, and it will be really disappointing if Nintendo somehow ditches it in the next console. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Amazon affiliate link if you want to. Goodbye.